Nothing like going into the final week of your championship matches with maybe 25% of your roster on the bench. That's what we're here for. We'll take care of you. All right, welcome to a special Week 17 edition of BSP Sunday Morning Fantasy. I'm your co-host, Ryan Stern. Joined with me, as always, Derek Mountain, Tom Bennett. Guys, we've reached the end. We got Week 17, so we've got a look ahead to next year's drafts. We're going to look at some of the guys that are going to have a pretty wide variance depending on what goes on over this offseason and with how they've played this year. And then we're going to look at your DFS lineups. We're going to do our studs, and sleepers, but based on DFS, as this is one of the biggest DFS weekends of the year with a lot of people having their championship matches last week. They're now looking to get one more week of fantasy in them. So we've got a lot of DFS to talk about today. And, of course, we will be answering your questions. If you have a DFS lineup question, if you have a lineup question for the final week of your championship matches, we are here for you. So just leave the questions in the comments. We will answer them live on air. Guys, Week 17, how's it going?
It's always bittersweet this time of year, you know. We had the second to last college football game last night. It's been a very weird college football season, but like football is, before we know it, it's coming to an end. But it's also exciting. I mean, the playoffs are awesome, so that's exciting. But I mean, I'm never ready to move on from the season.
Yeah, but I know Derek and I, we were talking before the show started. Whoever decided that having the seventh team is really giving themselves a big pat on the back, because there are a lot of football games today that have playoff implications on the line. So that does help your fantasy teams in some shape or form. But again, we still have teams like the Chiefs who are going to be resting the majority of their starting players. The Steelers are benching some of their starting players, including their quarterback. And then you have the teams that are eliminated. Are they going to look to play rookies or young players that can have an impact next season? That's why Week 17 is always the most interesting fantasy week of the season, just because there's so much that can happen. So we will start off today's show. We're going to talk a little bit about next year. So we're each going to pick one player from each position that can have a pretty wide variance over where they're going to be drafted. I know we started to get into a little bit of this last week, but we're going to finish it off. We're each going to pick one player from each position. And so I'll start off with the quarterbacks. And my quarterback's going to be Lamar Jackson. He was the QB1 in most leagues that were out there this year. And over, I guess, the first 12 weeks of the season, he was not the Lamar Jackson that we saw last year. He has certainly picked it up over the past couple weeks. But was he a player that you had to hold on to because of the name and you had to keep playing him? And because of that, maybe you ended up outside the playoffs looking in based on the fact that you felt that you had to keep playing him. And a lot of what is going to determine Lamar Jackson's draft value next year is going to be dependent on what the Ravens do this offseason. If they remain status quo at the pass-catching positions, obviously they're set with Mark Andrews, but it's really going to be about the wide receivers. Miles Boykin has been okay, but he's never going to be a top two receiver on a team. The guy that was a real disappointment was Hollywood Brown. And he's going to be someone that is going to need to take a huge step forward in order for Lamar Jackson to get back to where he was in 2019. But they're going to need a wide receiver one. Hollywood Brown is not a wide receiver one. He's a really good wide receiver two, someone that can take attention off of a wide receiver one because of his speed. But they really need to bring someone in. So Lamar Jackson's going to be real interesting to see where he fits in, because right now, if I'm drafting a team for next year, I'm drafting Mahomes ahead of him. I'm drafting Rodgers ahead of him. I'm drafting Watson ahead of him. I'm drafting Herbert ahead of him. So there's 4 already. Josh Allen, I'm drafting ahead of him. So right now, Lamar Jackson isn't a top 5 quarterback next year. So, we'll see what happens with that. Derek, who you got?
Just adding on to that too, I think this is a good offseason to have wide receiver needs just because of the free agent class and the draft class. I mean, we saw how special this rookie class was, and I think this year's or next year's rookie class could do the exact same. And another team who should be going after wide receivers, another quarterback I'm looking at is Jalen Hurts. Now, Tom mentioned him 2 weeks ago when he got the starting spot. I was a little skeptical about his short-term success just because of how anemic and how dysfunctional the Eagles are. The offensive line's been a mess. Play calling's been just terrible at times. But they've patched together 2 solid games. Jalen Hurts kind of came back down to earth last week. I think you kind of saw what his biggest flaws are, which are getting off his first read really fast and wanting to use his legs. Now, with an entire offseason under his belt, I think that'll be huge for him. They're going to bring back Doug Peterson, which as an Eagles fan, I don't love. But for Jalen Hurts and maximizing him, it could be good. I do think his play calling has gotten a lot better. I do think he fits the structure of that offense a lot better. And in terms of fantasy, these are the guys you look after, is these guys that can run. I mean, we saw it with Lamar 2 years ago, Josh Allen and Kyler Murray this year. These are guys that win you leagues and that take off, and they just present way more upside when they use their legs. I'm willing to draft Jalen Hurts as a top 6, top 7 quarterback next year, and I'm not sure he really is going. I think he's going to be maybe a borderline top 10 guy when it comes to draft season. Doug Peterson's still a question mark. I still think the talent around him's not great, but I'm willing to take that risk.
Yeah, and this is going to be a real interesting offseason for the Eagles. What are they going to do with Carson Wentz?
If they can.
Right. I'm not 100% positive about what their hit would be if they end up trading him.
Yeah, I mean, so if they traded him after the post-June 1st designation, his cap hit is way less significant. It goes down to under $10 million for each year. But
it's going to be hard to find a trade partner after June 1st.
Exactly. I think the Eagles' best chance is when the league year starts and they have to force a team to take on his prorated bonus money. So if the Eagles were to trade him, so say they trade him to the Colts, a team with a lot of cap space, maybe they take on his $12 million guarantee next year. That's $12 million the Eagles don't have to worry about because they have a ton of cap issues going into next year. That's kind of their only option in terms of trading him, because I think the only thing you can trade him for next year is a day 3 or maybe a 3rd round pick in the 2021 draft, maybe.
Yeah. Boy, how graces have been fallen.
Unbelievable.
Tom, who you got as your quarterback?
Well, it was going to be Carson Wentz, but I'm pretty sure we covered that already. I'm going to go with Ryan Tannehill here. I'm kind of surprised that you didn't have Tannehill going before Lamar, because he's playing at a very solid level. I know he doesn't have the appeal that Lamar has on the ground, and it's in a run-heavy offense, but Tannehill is a guy that I can see slipping into that top 10, top 7 quarterback range just because of his consistency. He has the weapons around him that make his numbers good enough to start every week of the season. I don't necessarily know how the offseason is going to affect him, whether or not they get some more offensive line help, or if they're going to focus more on just getting Derrick Henry the ball or institute a new scheme or anything. But Ryan Tannehill is one of the more intriguing players for me going forward at the quarterback position.
So,
all right.
Go, Derek.
I was just going to say, are you worried about Arthur Smith maybe moving as a head coach next year somewhere else? And I do think we have to talk about Derrick Henry's legs at some point. Do you think it catches up to him next year? Because he is a beneficiary of that ground game.
Yeah, I mean, all of those are factors. I didn't really think about the head coach or the head coaching opportunities for I'm believing it's the OC. That's entirely possible, and that could hurt Tannehill or it could help him, because if they bring in a pass-heavy offensive coordinator, then that's going to really help him. And with Derrick Henry's legs, same thing. They're either going to be stupid fresh and they're going to keep running him the way that they're running him, or they're going to take a little break and help Tannehill out even more. So that's what I'm saying. There's too many question marks going forward just with that. But if we're looking at pure speculation, I think that he's got the most swing based on what happens in the offseason.
Yeah, so with Tannehill, I can envision myself drafting Tannehill ahead of Lamar Jackson. But in terms of ADP, I think the name of Lamar Jackson is still going to draw more interest, especially in hometown leagues.
Definitely.
Agreed.
Where Lamar Jackson, in the majority of leagues, is going to go ahead of Ryan Tannehill. I would probably draft Tannehill ahead of him.
I was going to say I'll wait for Tannehill.
Yeah.
And especially the one thing that I love to look for in a quarterback is a quarterback that has good options and a bad defense. And that's one thing that we've seen from Ryan Tannehill. It's another thing that Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is going to be somebody, especially if they're able to bring back Will Fuller, maybe add a piece at tight end, or a big physical wide receiver, something that they don't have.
Maybe like a DeAndre Hopkins.
Maybe someone like DeAndre Hopkins, but
Eric the enemy.
And get the enemy. Yep.
Deshaun Watson is going to be someone that may end up on a lot of my teams next year if he starts to fall.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to running backs, and the running back that is going to be the guy that I'm looking at is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He was drafted in the first round in a lot of leagues. He was someone that I drafted in a couple spots. I was in a dynasty startup auction, and I overpaid for Clyde Edwards-Helaire this year. My top two running backs were Saquon Barkley and Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yikes.
Yikes, but, luckily, and I'm hoping that this year showed the Dolphins that he can be. I was able to pick up Myles Gaskin on the waiver wire, so that's a pretty good third option. But in terms of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the offense that the Chiefs run is a lot more intricate than a lot of other offenses, and we saw that huge game week 1. And I think a lot of people that drafted him were taking the victory laps, like me, about Clyde Edwards-Helaire and what he was going to be able to do in this offense. And it just was not able to. He was not able to sustain it over the majority of the season. So, where is Clyde Edwards-Helaire going to slot in the running back landscape next year? I don't see him being drafted as a top 12 as an RB1. If he's able to fall into that 13 to 18 area, I'm probably going to be in on him again, because I think that the talent plus having a full year in the offense is going to just it has to. Andy, this is the first time in like 15 years that Andy Reid didn't have an RB1 on his team.
Yeah, I was just about to say, so I expected at his floor to at least be a great pass catcher out of the backfield. We just haven't really seen that. He's not a part of the pass game that much. And for Andy Reid, that's weird. That just wasn't his deal with Philadelphia and in the beginning part of Kansas City. I think that'll change next year with a full offseason. I do have my concerns with Mahomes' playing style. I mean, he airs it out more than any other quarterback. It's not like he's a check down kind of guy, but I do still think that they're going to design a lot more in the pass game for Hilaire. I mean, as you said, that's a big learning curve for him, and especially with Damian Williams opting out, he's put in a tough spot. I'm happy to scoop him up late second or early third next year.
Yeah. I mean, if he falls into the third round, I just don't see him not being a value there.
I forgot about Damian Williams. I'm not even gonna lie. I kind of forgot he was like. I remember now. He signed his huge contract and then opted out. Oh my god.
Yep.
Gross.
All right, Derek, who you got?
I will go with AJ Dillon, who I think gave some fantasy owners some headaches going into this year.
Stealing my pick. Damn it.
Some guys took some flyers on him late in drafts this year. And I think if you're in a dynasty league, you were really excited about last week. And look, it's only going to be speculation going into this offseason because I think we're going to see a similar story today. Aaron Jones was nicked up last week. They utilized AJ Dillon in the frozen tundra and Lambeau. He got 20 carries. He was great. He goes to Soldier Field today against Chicago. I think it's going to be a similar story. And Aaron Jones is a free agent. So do they ride with Jamal Williams, who is more versatile, more of a dual threat guy in that Aaron Jones role? Do they bring someone else in? Or do they turn to AJ Dillon? Matt LaFleur is coming from Tennessee where he found that Derrick Henry offense where it was based around that workhorse. AJ Dillon is a very similar mold. They reached for him in the second round, and I think a lot of people envision that backfield and envision that philosophy almost happening earlier than it did last week. And we have no way of knowing. Aaron Rodgers is getting up there in age, but we're seeing what he's doing. He's probably going to win the MVP. Yep. But does Matt LaFleur make the calculated decision to kind of turn the offense to AJ Dillon, take some pressure off of Aaron Rodgers, or do they keep doing what they're doing? They run it back. AJ Dillon is that power back, but he's not really that workhorse yet. We don't know. I mean, I think we could see him in the top 60 next year in redraft leagues if he keeps tearing it up, especially going into the playoffs.
I think without Aaron Jones, he's probably a top 50, maybe even top 40 player next year.
Are you willing to make that leap?
Not in a PPR. It'll probably fall in PPR. But tell me, watching AJ Dillon last week didn't remind you of watching rookie year Eddie Lacy? Yeah, and I mean, I think don't look into it. They picked him in the second round. Yeah. I mean, that is high draft capital, especially nowadays for a running back. And I don't think Aaron Jones is going to come back. I think he's going to get a decent payday from another team. They don't really need him because Jamal Williams is maybe a step down from him, and they have AJ Dillon. I don't envision him coming back, and I don't envision them just supplanting Dillon as the third string running back next year. I really don't.
So it's really interesting you say that because going into the season, when they made the Jordan Love pick and AJ Dillon, me and a couple of my friends were talking about how obviously Jordan Love is going to give Aaron Rodgers an Aaron Rodgers situation, right? That was the talk of the draft, talk of the offseason. But we also said that it was going to be an Aaron Rodgers situation for Aaron Jones. So I think that both of their contracts are up at the same time. Maybe Rodgers has an extra year on him or whatever. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Rodgers. And obviously, I think they're moving on from Jones. I think that's been kind of talked about a little bit. And I'm not going to add on anymore. But with Rodgers, too, it's going to be interesting to see how long they extend him, because it's going to be they're waiting for Rodgers to not be playing at an MVP level to turn it over to Jordan Love. And I think that helps Dillon a little bit more as well. because it's going to be a guy getting his first starts in the system and everything. But
no, this is still Aaron Rodgers' team.
Yeah, for now.
All right. And Tom, who you have as your running back?
So I'm going to go with James Robinson. I know he's been playing as a top 10 RB this year. No one's going to deny him that. I'm more interested to see what happens with that head coaching position and what happens with the quarterback, because I know that they're projected to get Trevor Lawrence. And I saw the reports. I think I sent in the Backsports page group chat that Urban Meyer is the lead candidate to get that job. I'm really wondering how much they're going to utilize him, because Meyer's going to want to show off Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence is fantastic passer. We could see them go after some of these wideouts that are in the free agency class, kind of get him a stud receiver there, because even though Jacksonville, I think, has really solid receivers, there isn't a true wide receiver one there. I don't believe Chark is a true one. I mean,
Trevor Lawrence he might be. Trevor Lawrence he might be.
That's fair, and I get that, and I understand why you have him there. But as of right now, he's not playing in that wide receiver one threshold. So, and that's because of the quarterbacking play, and that's why Robinson has kind of been playing at this top 10 running back level. So I'm really interested to see where he's drafted and whether or not he falls due to the incoming quarterback situation, along with the head coach. He could get schemed out.
Okay. I was going to pick James Robinson, but I didn't, because I knew Ryan wanted to talk about the Jaguars as well. And I love it. I do want to talk about Jaguars going into next year, because they're definitely one of the more interesting teams, especially from a fantasy perspective. I think James Robinson is going to get the Aaron Jones treatment, where he's not the sexiest player. We worry about the coach, because he's not really aligned to – he's not going to be aligned to Urban Meyer, whoever that coach is next year, but his production speaks for himself. I will gladly take him in the second round, which is where I think he will fall, because I don't think the Jaguars have a need at running back. They have so many other needs. I think it would be foolish if they spend a high pick on a running back or cap space on a running back in free agency, and they might. We'll see what the new regime does, but James Robinson can do it all. I mean, he can run on first and second down, and he can catch the ball in the backfield, and he can pass protect. And I think he could be aligned for even more success with Trevor Lawrence. So I will gladly take him in the second round.
That's what I'm saying. So people are going to see this narrative and just either rate him super high and take him early, or they're going to say, oh no, Trevor Lawrence is going to throw for 6,000 yards and he's going to fall into the later rounds. So I think that he has a lot of swing as well.
So I do think that he has a lot of swing, because there are going to be the people who are going to look at what he did this year and put him in the top 10. I wouldn't draft him amongst the top 10 running backs in next year's draft. But again, if he's there in that 12 to 18 range, I'm going to hop all over it, because we saw what he was able to do with some of the most miserable quarterback play that the NFL has seen. And if there's any competency, is the volume going to go down with Trevor Lawrence? Yes, but the efficiency should go up.
I was going to say touchdown numbers, efficiency. He was efficient as a runner. He was near 5 yards a carry on that offense, and there's no threat of a passing attack.
Think of all the additional opportunities for touchdowns this team is going to have with Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback. So, yeah.
Or Justin Fields, as some people say.
No. Just be happy that he's going to the Jets, because he's like the best consolation prize in the last 10 years.
I don't know, man.
So I don't know if any of you saw Shefty actually reported earlier today that that the Jets are going to make a big time trade.
Darnold.
And that it's either Darnold getting traded or the Jets trading out of number 2.
Look, I get the sentiment of wanting to build around Darnold, and I think getting Penny Sewell at number 2 is really intriguing. But they can't possibly.
That's bookend tackles that you're going to have for 10 years with Becton and Sewell.
Why can't I just get Christian Darrisaw
Right.
at the back end of the first round. I mean, running it back with Darnold with a new coach, that just is a disaster waiting to happen, in my opinion. Why would you even consider running it back with him? I mean, he's broken in New York. I think a new team tries to repair him with good coaching, good offensive line, all that's well and good. I think it's similar to Carson Wentz, but no one's talking about repairing it with Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. Why are we doing that with Sam Darnold in New York?
It's because you know what, they don't have an option on the team right now.
You know what Sam really needs?
But they will.
But right now the issue with Carson Wentz and the Eagles is they now have literal proof that they have a young quarterback that can have success in the NFL. The Jets don't have it on the team right now, so that's why those questions aren't being raised.
You know what Sam really needs? It's the same thing that Matthew Stafford has needed for the past couple of years, a change of scenery. Yeah. Like he needs to get out of the New York, get out of the stadium that he's been playing.
Yeah, I still like Darnold. I still think he could be a good quarterback in this league. I think there's a lot of redeeming qualities, but yeah, it's done in New York.
If he went to Indy, I think that he could be a top 15, top 12 quarterback.
Oh, absolutely.
Fantasy wise or numbers wise.
Sam Darnold is still 23 years.
He's younger than Burrow. He's a top 3 pick.
Younger than Lamar Jackson.
he progressed year 1 and year 2. He made a jump, and he was with Adam Gase. We saw what Ryan Tannehill has been doing without Adam Gase. So, like, the upside is there. I think they will get a late first for him. There's no question, because the last 2 games he's played well. Still really young. Still has all the tools that you want, and a franchise quarterback is just inconsistency.
What about this landing spot? What about New Orleans?
I've been thinking about that too.
Earlier. Yeah, I mean, I do think he actually fits that Payne mold a lot more than a Jameis Winston.
Yep.
But again, I don't think you could insert him as a starter week 1 necessarily. I think that's a lot to ask for him. But you could behind that offensive line, and you base the offense around Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray, and they ease him in to more responsibility. I think that's intriguing. I think I would like to see New Orleans. And what about Denver for him or Wentz? Is that possible?
I don't think they have the cap space for Wentz. I wouldn't mind seeing him there, but I'm still a little bit of an advocate for Drew Lock because we've seen.
I think they bring someone in to compete with Lock.
Oh.
I think at the very least, because
Drew Lock is not the answer.
I know he's not, but he needs another year.
I mean, we're gonna get into it with my favorite receiver, but there's so much talent there, and it just it isn't used.
All right, so we're gonna move on to wide receivers, and my wide receiver is DJ Chark. DJ Chark was in 2019. Yeah,
probably too much, but I don't know. Could be that kind of jump.
DJ Chark in 2019 was the number 17 wide receiver in PPR, and that was with a 6th round rookie quarterback. DJ Chark has all of the physical tools to be a number 1 receiver in this league. He's going to fall in drafts next year because of people who drafted him this year, and he was burned by them because he wasn't healthy over the last half of the second half of the season, and 2, when he was on the field, he wasn't ultra productive. That's going to change completely with Trevor Lawrence as his quarterback instead of Mike Glennon and Gardner Minshew. The shine on Gardner Minshew really wore off this year, and in a big way. So, I mean, I happen to love DJ Chark, and if I can get him as a wide receiver 3, which is where I think he's going to land, I think DJ Chark is going to fall into 6th, 7th round next year, and I'm going to jump all over him because I think the talent plus the upgrade at quarterback, and they're going to upgrade at head coach. Doug Marrone is just the most bland coach that there ever was. So whether or not it's the right move with them bringing in potentially Urban Meyer, but what if it is someone like a Joe Brady? If you put Lawrence,
Brian Daboll,
If you put them in, if you put Lawrence and Chark in one of those offenses, I think this can be one of the better offenses in the league next year.
No doubt.
All right, Derek, who you got?
A guy who finished one spot below DJ Chark on the PPR standings last year, Cortland Sutton. He was a wide receiver 18 in PPR formats in 2019. He got hurt week 1, tearing his ACL. And look, it's a crowded receiver room. It's Tim Patrick has come onto the scene. Jerry Jeudy's had his struggles, but he is probably the de facto number one, or the guy that they put the most into in terms of investment. And you have KJ Hamler, and you have Noah Fant at tight end. It is crowded, but as we just talked about, what do the Broncos do next year at quarterback? I think that's going to be a huge thing to watch in terms of this entire team and where they go. I think Pat Shurmur is a accomplished and established offensive coordinator in this league. He had a lot of success in Minnesota. He wasn't as successful as a head coach, but I do think in terms of helping out offenses and helping out guys in terms of fantasy, he is intriguing. So this is purely a quarterback question for me. Where does Denver go in terms of quarterback? Do they stick with Locke? Do we bank on that kind of jump? Because I do think another year with Shurmur could help him, but I'm also not the biggest Locke believer. Tom does like Drew Lock, so maybe that does happen.
I mean, I don't love him,
but Cortland Sutton, he very well could fall outside the top 100, and he is a very good wide receiver, and he will be 12 months out. He will be 10 months out of a torn ACL before he has to start playing again in mini camps and in training camp next year, which is plenty of time. It's ample recovery time for a torn ACL in 2020, 2021. That's a guy that I'm definitely willing to take a late round flyer on, but he also could be forgotten in that wide receiver room, depending on where they want to go. Do they want to build it around Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler, or who I think are probably the two best receivers right now in that wide receiver room? I think are Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick.
Yep. Absolutely. I think when healthy, they've been the two most productive wide receivers of anyone in that wide receiver room. So, a lot's going to have to do with the quarterback. What are they going to do with Drew Lock? Are they going to bring in somebody that is going to make a push? What if they bring in someone like what if the Bears don't re-sign Mitch Trubisky? What if they bring in someone like Trubisky to battle for a spot with and to be honest, when you look at what Mitchell Trubisky has had success with, especially over the past couple weeks, Cortland Sutton, his game almost mirrors an Allen Robinson.
Yeah,
and I think a Trubisky addition to that team would be huge for someone like a Cortland Sutton.
And I think Shurmur's system, it alleviates a lot of pressure off the quarterback. I mean, I never even thought about that fit, but I would love that for the Denver offense next year.
Tom, who you got?
I was really hoping that you guys took some of my guys off my list because I have 4 guys sitting here that I really want to talk about. Oh, all right. I'm going to go with the guy whose name one of the 2 guys whose name we haven't mentioned yet. And I'm going to go with Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper was playing as the number 2 to number 4 wide receiver for the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, maybe even longer than that, with Dak Prescott at the helm. Then once he went down, and then the Garrett Gilbert and the Ben DiNucci and all the other stuff, he fell off the edge of the earth. He's down at around wide receiver 16, I think, in some of the leagues. It's going to be interesting to see what Dallas does with quarterback. And a lot of these I know that we're saying, what are they going to do with quarterback? Dak could be re-signed, but we don't know how he's going to play coming off that gruesome injury. Andy Dalton, I don't think, is a long-term answer there, but they could stick him in there while Dak gets to 100%. How does that affect Amari Cooper in the early parts of the season versus his year end? Or they could go and bring in another quarterback. They could go trade for a Sam Darnold. They could bring in Phillip Rivers if Darnold's traded to the Colts. There are a lot of options and a lot of ways that the quarterback landscape of the league can shake out. And I think that Amari Cooper is going to be one of those guys that gets affected the most because of his talent and what we've seen him do in the past and his name. Cooper is a guy that's consistently taken in the top 3 rounds of the draft every year since he's kind of blown up since he was on the Raiders. So it's going to be really interesting to see for me whether or not he will keep that 3rd round and up tag. And it's going to solely be based on the quarterback play and potentially the coaching play, because I know that there are not love affairs with McCarthy right now in Dallas. So it could be a one and done, but I don't know. I really think that Cooper could go up potentially based on the quarterback or down.
Okay. What about the potential of him getting traded? Now, hear me out. So he signed a huge $100 million contract. What was that, 2 years ago? And it was front loaded. And through the first 2 years, they've gotten rid of a lot of that prorated bonus money. So if they were to trade him, I just looked it up, it would be an $8 million dead cap hit, and they would save $14 million. So that's a win there. They have $20 million in space. They create more room that way to re-sign Dak Prescott. They still Michael Gallup at the X. Maybe you put Cedric Wilson at the flanker, and you still CeeDee Lamb in the slot. It's still a good receiving core. You could draft another guy that you like, whatever, and you get a pick for Amari Cooper, maybe a late second or something. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, I mean, I had thought about the potential of trading him because that was the whole debate last year and the year before, right? It was how are they going to keep their core 3 between Zeke, Cooper, and Prescott, and everyone had their own opinion of which 2 they should keep because there's not enough money to keep all 3 of them. So I think 100% that is totally an option for them.
I don't think it's in Jerry's nature to do that trade because I think he wants as much flash as possible. But I think to help their team out, I think I would move on from him. I don't think you need all 3 of those guys. I think Amari Cooper is really talented, but they need a lot of help at a lot of other places.
I think the more realistic options in that scenario is they're either going to try and sign Dak to a lower deal because he's coming off injury, which that would suck and everyone would hate Jerry Jones for that. Or I think they could potentially trade Zeke because we've seen what Tony Pollard's been able to do.
Nobody is going to trade for Zeke after this season and him making $16 million a year.
Yeah,
there's no way that they're going to be able to.
Well, I think that's more of what they're going to try and focus on at least.
Well, obviously, I think that would be the way. But who's going to pay $16 million a year for a running back who is ineffective this year? I mean,
do you really need to ask me that question?
Oh yeah. Well,
we all know who would do it. All right, we all know who would do it.
I'm just waiting for the Jets to make their big splash in free agency and sign Juju to like $150 million.
I'm already prepared for that to happen. My friends have been making fun of me for it since week 15. It's gonna happen. They're gonna go sign Juju, and we're gonna be stuck with another Keyshawn Johnson situation.
All right, so just to build off of the Amari Cooper thing with Dak Prescott, what if the Cowboys don't sign him? What if
Oh no.
Because what if they're not able to move on from an Amari Cooper? What if they're not able to move on from a Zeke Elliott? Where's the money coming from? Where's the money coming from? Yeah, that they're gonna unless they win and Washington loses, they're going to have a top 10 pick in this draft. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a chance that they draft a quarterback this year. Trade
up to number 2 for Justin Fields because that's flashy.
I think if there's one thing we've learned this year, it's that Dak's their best player. I know Jerry Jones runs their team, so anything is possible. And he has done everything in his power to not pay Dak and not give him what he deserves. And he's basically played for free on that team, being a 4th round pick. It's unbelievable that he hasn't paid him, and he's paid Amari. He's paid Zeke. He's paid Jalen Smith. He's paid who am I missing? DeMarcus Lawrence. And he didn't pay Byron Jones, and he didn't pay Dak Prescott, probably the two best players out of all of those guys. And those are the two biggest hits this team has faced this year.
Look at the impact Byron Jones has had on revamping that Miami defense.
Exactly. Yeah. And look how bad
Xavier Howard
Cowboys secondary's been. Imagine him with Trayvon Diggs. Now, that is what they should have been building around on defense, and they should be building around Dak on offense. And, well, Jerry Jones runs the team, so they're not going to do that. But
what if Dak just becomes too expensive for them, and they're not able to work it out? They can't franchise him because the franchise number will be over $40 million this year.
Mm-hmm. And he wants $40 million a season. That was his number that he was throwing out last year.
He's not going to get it coming off an injury, but he's still going to get 30.
I don't know. So Philip Rivers is going to retire. He might retire.
Yeah.
Do the Colts pay that tag?
I think that's a terrific landing spot for Dak if he doesn't end up back in Dallas.
It's terrifying for the AFC. If that happens.
Yeah, I mean, them or the Broncos, I think, are the two best spots for Dak, just due to the weapons that both of them have. I know the Colts have the best line, but Denver's not a bad. I mean, look at the weapons. Dak has never had more weapons.
No, definitely.
All right, let's move on to the ever so popular tight ends.
Do we have to?
I think so.
Is tight end even a position anymore? I mean, they get the same amount of points as kickers.
Before we start, I'll just throw this out there because we don't know what team he's going to be on next year. Do you think Kyle Pitts will be a top 5 tight end pick next year in fantasy drafts?
Yes.
No.
I think no. Rookie, it's a lot. It's a big ask for rookie tight ends.
Here's the thing, though. Here's my thing.
There's too much data about rookie tight ends not being able to produce in their first year. Look at T.J. Hawkinson. I mean, T.J. Hawkinson, number 8 overall pick, he had a big first 2 weeks, and I don't think he scored as many points the rest of the season that he did in those first 2 weeks.
Here's my thing.
I wouldn't.
Here's my thing. Pitts plays more like a receiver.
I was going to say he's not
a great blocker.
Yeah, he goes with a good offensive coach. He's just going to be a slot receiver.
You know who else is? Evan Ingram.
Yeah, Pitts is bigger and more athletic.
But you know who else played like that too?
He's way more athletic.
You know who else played that?
T.J. Hawkinson.
Jimmy Graham.
I was going to say he fits closest to Jimmy Graham.
He fits closer to young Jimmy Graham on the Saints. Yeah. That dude is a pure receiver. Sure, he's a big body that can get in the defensive end's way and call it a block, I guess. But he's going to be a receiver. He's going to be Jimmy wide receiver.
I don't even know what team he's going to be on. I mean, Ryan, you've been a big proponent of the Patriots picking him. I don't think Belichick makes that pick.
Yeah, no, he's too smart for that.
What team is he going to be on? Because I think he's going to be a top 15 pick.
Yeah, and it's funny because then you say, all right, well, who needs help at tight end? Well, everybody except for 4 teams need help at tight end. So I mean, there is literally a ton of landing spots that he can end up in.
Yeah.
But
he's a dynasty guy to target for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think next year might be a little tough.
Yeah, so in my dynasty, one of my dynasty leagues, I thought I was set with having Zach Ertz and Eric Ebron as my 2 tight ends.
Yikes.
And I mean, Ebron's been okay, but he's not going to be a long-term answer.
Ertz is going to be on another team next year, I think.
Yeah. All right, so I mean, the guy that I decided to go with is Robert Tonyan. And Robert Tonyan right now is the tight end 4 in PPR. He's obviously not going to go in the top 4 because, I'm pretty sure the top 4 are going to be Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, and Andrews.
Yep.
Can Robert Tonyan sneak in as that tight end 5? Tight end is not necessarily a position that has always had great success with Aaron Rodgers. And Robert Tonyan has, while his end of season numbers look pretty good. Think of the amount of games that he's just absolutely blown up in, and then the amount of games where you're wondering, well, where's Robert Tonyan? So the consistency of how the Packers utilize Robert Tonyan really worries me. But again, it's a position that's so thin, and maybe it's a TJ Hawkinson that ends up as the tight end 5. If Robert Tonyan ends up anywhere outside the top 6 tight ends, which maybe Kyle Pitts ends up there somehow because he lands in a great spot. Like, what if it's with Dallas?
I know. I've seen that. That's a Jerry pick.
Right. What if Kyle Pitts ends up with Dallas and they're able to bring in, they're able to hold on to Dak Prescott? I mean, if that happens, you're going to see Kyle Pitts probably drafted ahead of Robert Tonyan. So, yeah. and I'll hop all over Tonyan whenever I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Derek, how about you?
I'm going Mark Andrews. You just mentioned him, but it's been a really disappointing season for Mark Andrews. But look, he's going to be mentioned later in our DFS show today by one of our other colleagues. But look, he is still the tight end 6 in PPR formats. He is half a point behind Logan Thomas, so it's very possible he finishes as the tight end 5 for the 2020 fantasy season. And all you hear about is with Mark Andrews is doom and gloom, and that passing attack has really plateaued and regressed in a big way. But the chemistry with Lamar Jackson is palpable. In terms of points per game, he's behind Kelsey, Waller, and Kittle, and that's it. He's still averaging 12.6 points per game in terms of PPR. I think before going into the season, he was paired with Darren Waller and was even valued ahead of Darren Waller with Zach Ertz for that second tight end spot, and he will be nowhere near that. I think a guy like Hawkinson will probably be drafted above him. Kyle Pitts will be in the mix. I still think Andrews will go above him, but Mark Andrews could easily be back in that top 3 tight end landscape next year if the Ravens find a way to progress in their pass game, because he's still going to be probably the top target in that pass game going into next year.
Yeah,
it's just not pretty. It's just not very pretty.
And it leaves me with a big decision, because in one of my leagues, which is a keeper league, I had drafted Andrews in the 2019 draft in the 18th round. So I was able to keep him in the 18th, and then it jumps up 2 rounds after. So he would be a 16th rounder for me next year. And I mean, that value just seems too good to pass up. But do I think that there are less values but on better players? So I mean, this season definitely spoiled my my hopes for someone like a Mark Andrews. The playoffs, to be honest, the actual, if they're able to get into the NFL playoffs, is going to have a big focal point as to whether or not I feel like it, because I need to see him be more acclimated into the offense. Mm-hmm. All right, let's wrap it up. Tom, who you got?
So we already talked about Noah Fant a little bit, so I'm going to kind of stay away from that. But we all know how I like Noah Fant. But I'm going to go with Logan Thomas. You mentioned his name, and it got me kind of thinking, who's going to be the quarterback there? Because Alex Smith is not the long-term answer. He might be great for this season, but they're probably going to get a quarterback. And if they lose today, then they're out of the playoffs, I believe, right? It's a win and in situation. Right. So if they lose, they're going to have a top 10 pick, top 15 pick, somewhere in there. Top 12.
Maybe 6 and 10. So I would think they'd be like 9 or 10.
So they have the potential to get one of these top quarterback prospects. Obviously, they're not getting Fields or Lawrence, but they could land Wilson, who might fall, or they can land Lance, or
was going to say Trey Lance athletically reminds me of a light version of Cam, who Ron Rivera coached throughout his entire Carolina career. So that's definitely a fit I've seen a ton.
Yeah, and I really like Kyle Trask, but that's too early to take him. But Logan Thomas is going to benefit from a new quarterback. Rivera saw the ability in him this season and has been utilizing him. He's been the guy that I think has been one of the more consistent guys over a guy like Terry McLaurin, who's kind of been up and down based on the quarterback play. Logan Thomas has been that kind of safety blanket. So getting a young rookie quarterback in there is going to need that safety blanket a little bit more as he's, learning the ropes for the NFL. And that could greatly affect him depending on who it is. I don't really, as much as I love Lance athletically, I think he's a little bit behind everyone else as a passer. And I also don't really trust those D2 guys. We saw with Carson Wentz, came from the same school, had a great couple seasons, but never really figured out how to put it all together. And now look where he is.
Steve McNair is also from FCS. I don't know. I think I think a lot of quarterback stuff is personality and work ethic and coaching. I think it's a lot of other stuff. And like in terms of checking off boxes, he does. And that's what you look for, like in the draft when you evaluate a guy, because that's all you can. It's not like we're interviewing these guys and all that stuff. In terms of Logan Thomas, he kind of sneaky had that like Darren Waller impact. It's not as much, but where he was taken late, maybe as a flyer. He's a converted quarterback, and he was thrusted into the starting role. And you don't know that much, but he's really athletic, and he produced really well. And next year, he could be a guy that's forgotten. Like a guy like Waller was just assumed to regress, and he didn't. I think Logan Thomas could be in a very similar situation next year.
Yeah, and I think it's all based on the quarterback play. And I hear all your points about Lance and everything. He's going to need to be coached up. He's one of the more project quarterbacks.
He's probably not going to play right away. Yeah.
Yeah, he'll play behind Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can. So, do you see Alex Smith still being a part of this team next year?
Yeah, I think he has to be.
I think he'll be on the team.
What right now? What would you put as the odds that Alex Smith is starting week 1 for Washington next year? Like what percentage?
I would have been the favorite. Like I would say, percentage. I would say 66, 2/3, because I think they're not going to be in that sweet spot. They're definitely not going to take one of the top 2 quarterbacks. Probably not Zach Wilson either. I think a team like Atlanta or Detroit would scoop him up before he falls to Washington. So I think they may be in play for Trey Lance. I think if they get in the playoffs, it might have to be a guy like Mac Jones or Kyle Trask, or they sign a free agent that maybe their version of Teddy Bridgewater. But I envision Alex Smith still being a part of this team in terms of continuity.
Well, there's a very good chance that it might be Teddy Bridgewater if the Panthers jump on a quarterback early in the draft.
Yeah.
Maybe they could be the trading partner with the Jets.
Mm-hmm. I don't understand why they're looking for a quarterback. Like Teddy wasn't terrible. He's got to get his feet wet.
He's pedestrian. He
was pedestrian. He wasn't great, but he wasn't bad.
He's not the quarterback that you want as your guy in a rebuilding team.
Yep.
You want to have a guy who can eventually be your franchise quarterback at the helm.
He's the perfect bridge quarterback. He's a little better version of Tyrod Taylor. He is probably like Alex Smith. He's maybe a little worse than what Alex Smith was in his prime, but he won't lose you games. But there have been so many one-possession games this year where Teddy had a chance to tie or win the game, and he just doesn't. He's vanilla ice cream. He's like fine, good, but it's not like extraordinary.
He's exactly what he's great at what he is. He's a budget beast. He's a guy that you can sign for a 4-year, $32 million contract or whatever he has now.
And he'll maximize that, yeah.
And he will get you the most out of your $32 million.
Yeah.
All right, so we are now going to shift our focus to studs, and sleepers, and it's going to be a little bit. It's going to be based on DFS. So I know the prices that I was able to pull were FanDuel prices. Again, these are guys that if you are looking to get into your or if you have a lineup question, somebody you're looking at, you can utilize some of these guys. If you have a specific question, leave them in the comments and we will answer them live on air. I know that it's a tough week for lineup questions because the majority of leagues did wrap up last week. Derek, I know you are in a 2-week championship, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just ask you this question real quick. Make sure, give me some security. But this is probably our only fantasy question of the day. For my flex, Dare Ugumbawale against Indy, Kenyon Drake versus the Rams, or Ty Montgomery against the Panthers. Oh. Which is the most Week 17 question ever. But who do you
PPR?
like? Yep.
PPR?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's a dart throw.
Okay, so
I just don't like Kenyon Drake. I think he's the only guy I don't like because he's going against LA and it's hampered Kyler. So I just feel like their offense is really going to struggle to move the ball today, and they're really going to play against the run.
And shockingly, it sounds like Chase Edmonds has a chance at playing today. So that may eat into some of his workload. I'm probably leaning Dare because we saw what he was able to do last week, and it wasn't spectacular, but there's a good
chance. Literally a guess. Yeah,
he's a guess because there's a just as good a chance that Taysom Hill is their starting running back and not Ty Montgomery. I think we want to take the known.
That's where I was leaning.
Last week, even though the matchup is tough, over the last 6 weeks, the Indy defense has not been good. I know they're in the bottom 7 in terms of giving up points to quarterbacks and wide receivers, and in the bottom 10 in terms of giving up points to the running back. So I'm probably going to lean towards Ugumbawale because I'm more certain of his volume.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
I don't know.
It's the grossest question ever.
Yeah, no. See, my thought initially going in was I was going to go with Montgomery just because of the situation with the Saints running backs, but I still think Kenyon Drake could pull out 10 points because of the hampered Kyler.
Yeah.
So
now, what's the scoring? Or I know it's a 2-week championship, you had said. So are you?
I'm up by 7, so it's basically still 50-50.
You have to play it as if it's a tie score.
And this game's for $400, and he's benching Kelsey and Mahomes. I had James Robinson; he's not playing. Luckily, all my studs are playing. I still have Eckler, Derrick Henry, Justin Herbert. So that's good, but the fact that I'm contemplating this and it's worth hundreds of dollars is just so dumb. But
is Darwin Thompson available?
He is. I was thinking about him, but Chad Henne at quarterback, so that doesn't get me too excited. At least,
but one thing with Chad Henne is that he can very easily dump it off.
That's what I was thinking with Glennon. We've seen it with Glennon.
and we've actually seen the Chiefs utilize Darwin Thompson even when everybody else has been healthy. I'd probably still lean Ugumbawale because of, again, recency bias.
Yeah.
We saw what his volume was like last week. But I think I would actually like Thompson more than the other two.
So the only reason I went with Drake is because I think the Cardinals out of those 3 have the most to play for because they're fighting for that spot. With Tyler playing hurt,
it's a win and in situation between them and the Rams. So the Rams have just as much to play for, and are clearly the best defense that any of these teams are going. I think
he has the best chance to get a touchdown, but I just don't see him getting 50 yards today on the ground. He doesn't catch the ball. And the Rams defense speaks for itself. The Rams defense has been legit all year. So that just scares me.
Yeah, I don't know. I would go with Drake personally, but I play for the upside in the championship week. So,
all right. So let us get into our studs, and sleepers for DFS. So what we're doing is we're taking in terms of starters. So with quarterbacks, we're looking at the top 12. Running backs, we're looking at the top 24. Wide receivers, we're looking at the top 36. So if they fall within that, we're going to look at them as studs. If they fall outside that, we're going to look at them as sleepers. And we can put anybody in the duds that we want. So I'm going to start off with Ryan Tannehill as my stud quarterback. He's on FanDuel right now at 8,200. We've seen in games where the Titans are going up against really bad defenses that both Tannehill and Derrick Henry can put up huge weeks, and I think that's what we see today. This is just a really, really, really bad Texans defense, and I mean, did either of you see the JJ Watt press conference from last week?
I know he said that to his team before he did that, because that can rub a lot of guys the wrong way. And I think that's the thing with Romeo Crennel too. He's like the friendliest guy in the world and everyone loves him, but I also think players take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So I wasn't a huge fan of that personally, but whatever.
Yeah. There was a lot of calling out. So it definitely could go one of two ways, but even if they come out, okay, JJ, we're going to rally behind our defensive leader. It's still a really bad group of defenders.
They don't have the personnel
that are there.
Cut them down.
So I'm all over the Tennessee Titans offense. I think that of all of the teams that need a win to get in, that they're probably my number one in terms of who I think will. It's close between them and the Colts. But with the Titans, they know that a win means a home game. So I'm all about Ryan Tannehill and the Tennessee Titans. I have him in almost half of my my cash games this week. Derek, who you got?
I'm going with Tom Brady. I think piggybacking off that last point, I think a big thing you got to factor in week 17 is motivation. So Tennessee's playing for a playoff spot in the division. Tampa Bay's playing for that 5 seed, which is it's instrumental in their success. They get to play the NFC East team. So Tom Brady's going to go into this game wanting to win, obviously. And Atlanta, I mean, I think they're close. They've been within a possession the last 3 games, and they've come up short. I think Raheem Morris has made some strides, but this is still a really bad defense. And we've seen what Tampa Bay's offense, specifically Tom Brady in the passing attack, have done to bad defenses. I think they struggle a little bit, and you see the continuity issues in throwing down the field. Those issues pop up against the good teams and the good defenses, but against Atlanta, against Detroit last week, against those bad teams, I mean, Tampa Bay is going to be able to do whatever they want. Tom Brady has an incentive. A bonus that works in for $600K, or is it like $560K? If
$562,500.
Yeah. So if he lands in the top 5 in passing yards, which he's at number 5 right now, he's got every motivation to pad the stat book today. And it's a plus matchup. The last time they played Atlanta, they put up 31 in the second half. And then in the first half against Detroit, they put up 34. This is the best that the Bucs offense has looked, and they have to win. So I love Tom Brady today, and I think he's the 10th highest paid quarterback in FanDuel and DraftKings.
Yeah, the incentive, and obviously $500,000 is what Tom Brady carries around in his pocket. But
I'm gonna say I want to see what Giselle makes a day, because it might be more than 500.
but you know what? that incentive probably means a healthy donation to a charity for him. So that could be one of
And
the.
I think it's a legacy thing and a pride thing because with Tom Brady, he's just wired differently. There's been no reason for him to play the last 2 or 3 years, and there's no reason for him to go to Tampa other than to cement his legacy, move on from Belichick, and win without him. I just think he's wired that way, and I think he's a killer. I mean, I just think he's going to want to always prove a point.
All right, Tom, how about you?
I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers, and I know that's one of the more expensive options, but Rodgers is playing for I think he's still playing for the home field advantage, or did he lock it up?
No,
they win.
They need. Yeah. Well, no, they don't need a win. They can back into the number 1 overall seed, but they clinch the number 1 seed with a win.
Yeah, so that's what I figured. So he's going to want that first round bye with the home field advantage. It's Chicago. They're fighting for a spot. It's a rivalry game, probably the biggest rivalry in that conference, even though there's so much history there, division. Rodgers has always played well versus Chicago. He's owned them since he's been the quarterback there. I have no problem paying up for Rodgers and letting him and Devontae do their work so that they get that number 1 overall seed.
Yeah, I was trying. Yeah, right. Exactly. The MVP. I was trying to get Rodgers into 1 or 2 of my lineups, but it was tough to. I think he's a much better tournament play this week than a cash game play, because I think that a lot of people are going to look to save money at the quarterback position this week.
Yeah, and that's fair. I really like his odds, and if you went with him, there would be no problem with it.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to move on to stud running backs of the week, and this is the guy that I made sure to get into almost all of my cash game lineups this week. Gets to go up against one of the worst rushing defenses in the game, and though he is at 8,400, I still was able to maneuver around a little bit. So I'm going Jonathan Taylor from the Colts going up against the Jaguars today. This can very easily be, and again, the Colts need a win and help. So this isn't going to be one of those we can rest our laurels once we get a big lead. They need to make sure that they pull off their end of the bargain. And especially if they see one of these teams has one of the teams that they need to lose is losing in the fourth quarter, it's going to be all Jonathan Taylor. And Jonathan Taylor, to me right now, is one of the more intriguing backs with next year. I have him right now at number 5.
He's looked great the past month. That's what everyone was expecting out of the jump, and I don't know if that was a fair expectation, but they have that entire offensive line back. I think Costanzo's a question mark. He might retire, and he's hurt this week. But other than that, I mean, the offensive line is going to be great. They might have a change of quarterback, but they're going to build around Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, and we've seen over the past couple of weeks, he has become the guy. We're not worried about Nyheim Hines. We're not worried about Marlon Mack.
He's a free agent.
Right, who's a free this is now Jonathan Taylor's backfield.
Yep.
Finally.
Right. Yeah. All right, Derek, who you got?
I'm going Nick Chubb. He had a really disappointing week last week, and I attribute that loss to Kevin Stefanski's play calling. I just think he let the game get away from him. I think he overthought it a little bit. I know they were without the receivers, but it was a pass-heavy attack against the Jets secondary, who it is really poor, but that they dropped back Baker 53 times. Nick Chubb had 11 carries. Kareem Hunt had a handful of carries. It was not optimal. I think they go back to Chubb and Hunt today. They have to. The playoffs are on the line. They're playing a Steelers team without TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, Joe Hayden, Minka Fitzpatrick. I still think it's going to be a tight game. It's an AFC North game. I still think the Steelers and those backups have to play for a spot on the team and then the NFL next year. They want to solidify their spot with a lot of these backups. It's still going to have that AFC North feel to it. And I don't think they're going to rely on Baker like they did last week. That's just not optimal. That's not the way they should play. I think Stefanski is going to go back to Chubb. The Steelers defense, even at full strength, has looked a little more susceptible up front. I think they're a little bit tired, and they're going to be going to their backups today. I'm willing to pay up for Chubb. I think he's the 6th highest paid guy on DraftKings. I'm willing to pay up for Chubb. I think Week 17, they have to lean on their best player.
Yeah, I think Chubb is more of that he's a better play over on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings because of the difference between a half point and a full point PPR. He's not going to get the majority of the passing work out of the Cleveland backfield. That'll be Kareem Hunt. So I think he is a better play over there, but on FanDuel. But I think Kevin Stefanski learned a really big lesson last week. Like you said, we're going to see a healthy dose of that backfield this week. Tom, who you got?
So I'm 100% on board with you on Tennessee, Ryan. I'm going Derrick Henry here, 2nd highest. I mean, it's Houston. J.J. Watt can make all the speeches that he wants, but Derrick Henry's going to – I think if Derrick Henry goes for 230-something yards, he can break 2,000, I believe.
Yeah.
So they're going to be aiming for that. I mean, Derrick Henry's having a hell of a season, and they want to cap it off with a 2,000-yard, become, I think, the 8th player to ever rush for 2,000 yards. He's going to want to do that. They're going to feed him, and Houston's defense is so weak that it's going to be easy, I think. So once Derrick Henry hits that 2,000, they'll probably bench him. And
well, they're another game last week where I look at they went away from Derrick Henry right away, and that was more because the Packers got up 19-0 in the second quarter. But they're going to go back to Henry. I mean, I think it's a 30 carry game for him.
He's getting that 2,000.
Derrick Henry gave the most uninspiring 98-yard performance that a running back has ever given last. Nobody real. I mean, obviously, as a fantasy owner, you're expecting your big gun to give you that 25 point game, and Derrick Henry still put up 98 yards. And
where's he going to go next year?
Who?
Henry in drafts.
Didn't he just sign a?
In drafts.
Oh, in drafts.
Yeah.
I thought you meant. I was like, he just signed a contract.
Oh no. But like the legs are going to catch up to him. I just don't know when.
In redraft, in straight redraft, he's a top 4 pick.
Yeah. So you take McCaffrey,
Kamara, Cook, and Henry, and then Henry.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially when it's any type of PPR. In a standard, I may look at Henry
top 2. Yeah.
I might take him over Kamara too without Drew Brees.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
All right. So now we are moving on to wide receivers. And I am going to go with Calvin Ridley. I know that I'm taking Tom's boy. But Calvin Ridley, so do either of you know the last time that Calvin Ridley didn't have at least 9 targets in a game that he wasn't injured in?
Last year.
Week 7.
It was exactly week 7. Way to pull that out of your rear end. And in that game, he still had 5 for 69 and a touchdown. He has had since week 11 because he had gotten injured. Then they had a bye. Since week 11, he has had in a PPR league for at least 14 points every single week. He has been one of the most consistent wide receivers over the back half of the season, and especially without Julio Jones, he just gets heavily targeted. We saw 2 weeks ago Atlanta play against Tampa Bay. He had 14 targets, 10 catches for 163 yards and a touchdown. Right now, he is at 8,700 on FanDuel, so he is pretty expensive. But I'm willing to find a deal somewhere else in order to get Calvin Ridley, because to me, he's one of the safest options on the slate this week.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
real quick, do the
he's a
Falcons
chair.
move on from Julio and Matt Ryan in the offseason?
They can't.
Yeah, the
contracts are unbelievable.
I don't know. I didn't know how much longer they had the contracts for.
They're much
2024, I think.
Both of them?
Yeah. They signed on. I mean, they
Yikes.
both had huge extensions after that Super Bowl run. And they didn't start kicking in until last year, maybe.
Yikes.
But yeah, like they can't move on from either of them. Especially Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's contract is a train wreck, and no one – I don't know why you would want Matt Ryan at this point.
Let's see. So
Yikes.
yeah, 2024. He had received $100 million guaranteed dollars.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, over
Indianapolis.
yeah, over the next couple years, his dead cap is at least $50 million. The cap hit is 41 the next 2 years, although there is a potential out after the 2021 season.
So after next year.
Yeah, after next year, there's a potential out where the dead cap is only $26.5 million. And I say only, but that would end up being a savings of let's say almost $50 million.
Yeah, Atlanta is the third most tied up team in the league, though. They're the only two teams that are ahead of New Orleans and Philly.
They can't afford to have dead cap money right now.
No.
Yeah, so maybe after next year, but obviously not this year. I mean, if you can get out of Matt Ryan, like if you can find the funds to get out of Matt Ryan, I think they will.
Yeah. So,
I mean,
Derek, who you got as your wide receiver stud of the week?
I'm going with Robert Woods. I think he's on that cusp of a low-end wide receiver too in terms of his price range, but I think it's going to be all Robert Woods today. Cam Akers is on track to play, I saw, but I'm not convinced that he's going to get that much work. It's John Walford. I know a lot of people are going to be scared off by that, but no Cooper Kupp. Who else should you give the ball to? When backup quarterbacks are inserted into the lineup, you lean on your best players and you try to scheme those guys open and make it as easy as possible for those backup quarterbacks. I think it's going to be a bunch of jet sweeps, a bunch of boot to Robert Woods. I think it's going to be a lot of isolated one-on-ones with Robert Woods. They're going to move him outside and in the slot. I think we're going to see some Van Jefferson, but I think it's going to be a highly targeted day for Robert Woods because there's really nowhere else they could go with this offense today.
Didn't they also bring Blake Bortles back?
Yes, but he's not able to play this week because of COVID protocols.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because I saw they signed him. I was like, they're gonna play him. But
because of the quarantine, the 10-day
the
10-day rule, it left him outside of the window for playing this week.
Dang. Yikes.
But to be honest, if they win,
I don't think Walford's going to be bad today. I mean, he hasn't logged a snap, but his playing style is conducive to success right away. He can run. He could create outside the pocket. I had seen him twice at Wake Forest, and once was in a bowl game, and it's not the greatest arm in the world. There's a reason he's an undrafted free agent, but I do think he'll be able to generate some offense on third downs of that such with his legs, and I think he can create a little bit for his receivers on the run. So we'll see. But I mean, who else you got to throw to?
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't think either of us have him in our sleepers, but he's not a terrible tournament play because there is definitely a chance that he puts up 60 to 70 rushing yards on top of whatever he's able to do in the passing game. I mean, he ran a 4.71 40-yard dash. He's going to be one of the more athletic quarterbacks in the league. We just don't know what he's going to be able to do in the passing game, but the two wide receivers I was deciding between, and the two wide receivers I have most often in my leagues. I do have Ridley in some, but I have Robert Woods in in the majority of my leagues. He's only 60
for Bobby.
Only 6,800 on FanDuel. So, Tom, who you got?
I'm going with DK. He's only 7,600. And the Seattle, I think, through some math that is beyond my capability, has a chance at the 1. Is that right? Or are they completely out of it?
Yeah, they need both.
A three-way tie. Yeah.
No, the Saints are the team that needs the three-way tie.
Oh, okay.
The Seahawks would need both the Saints to lose to Carolina and the Packers to lose to Chicago.
Yeah. So
they're gonna be playing.
They're still gonna play it out just
at
in case that happens.
At least the first half.
They're gonna put up points to just secure, like, okay, we're gonna win this game just in case. And DK, I think, is going to be a big part of that. Only playing the half really scares me, but we haven't seen any of Tyler Lockett in recent weeks. The guy's gone completely AWOL. Like, it's going to be all DK, I think. And if the game stays close, I don't think it will, but we've seen crazier things. I mean, we saw San Francisco beat Arizona. So, if the game stays close, I think that DK will still be the focal point later on in the game, but yeah, I think that he'll be able to crack off a couple of big targets on this, or the big runs on this.
I'm really interested to see if Seattle tries to throw teams off by going back to the letting Russ cook and thinking, oh, is this what they're going to be going into the playoffs, and then potentially going back to how they have been over the past. So it's definitely a smokescreen type of game for the Seahawks, and we'll actually get into in the duds. I do have a Seahawk in there. So, all right, let's move on to tight ends. And my tight end stud of the week is going to be Mike Gesicki. Is going against Buffalo. Buffalo is already announcing that they are resting some of their starters, including Tre'Davious White. Mike Gesicki is going to be an absolute stud this week. Miami needs to win to get in, and there isn't a whole lot of motivation for Buffalo in this game, especially if they're looking over at Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is going to be resting their guys, which would mean an automatic lock of the number 2 seed for Buffalo. So I'm steering away from most Buffalo players, and we'll get into that. But I really do like Mike Gesicki this week. We've seen him get utilized over the past couple of weeks more and more with Tua. So we'll see. It's a must-win situation for Miami. So they're going to do whatever they need to come away with a victory. Derek, how about you?
I'm going with George Kittle. We saw him make his return last week, and he was effective right away. And there's no Brandon Ayuk, there's no Deebo Samuel, there's no Raheem Mostert for the San Fran offense today. Beathard does like to target Kittle. He's the only main option that they have left from week 1, really. It's him, Kendrick Bourne, Jeff Wilson. So Kittle, the drop-off between him and Darren Waller is over $1,100 in DraftKings. So I'm easily taking Kittle over Waller today. And Waller has a negative matchup against Denver. So I'm willing to take that risk. I think Kittle's going to be heavily targeted. He could easily be in line for double-digit targets. So I'm willing to pay up $6,000 for Kittle on DraftKings.
Tom, how about you?
Another team that's in a must-win situation if they're trying to go to the playoffs. I'm going with Mark Andrews and the Ravens. I know that there's a whole cluster of teams that are fighting for those bottom 3 seeds in the AFC between the Colts, Ravens, and the Titans, I guess, are technically in it. And I don't even the Browns, like they're yeah, there's just a ton of teams down there, and the Ravens are going to realize they need to win this game. I missed. Oh crap! I forgot to put who they're playing. You guys want to just remind me?
The worst team against tight ends.
Yeah, the worst team against tight end. That I mean, it's going to speak for itself. Andrews is the top option there. Cincinnati's defense sucks, almost as bad as the Jets.
And to be honest, they've actually been over the last 6 weeks one of the top 15 defenses against running backs. And I mean, we know that what was the stat? I think they're over 60 games in a row or something like that, where they have rushed for 100 yards as a team. Or
I didn't even hear that.
All right, I'll look it up after I give my my quarterback dud. But they're definitely a team you want to attack against the tight end. So Mark Andrews is definitely in play. All right, we are moving on to our duds portion, and we'll start off with quarterbacks. And my quarterback is going to be Josh Allen. Not because I don't think Josh Allen would be good, but I'm not sure. So Josh Allen is going to start, but this may be like last year. Last year, week 17, we saw Josh Allen with 11% of the snaps in week 17. So he was active. He came out for the first drive, and that was it. The name Josh Allen is so enticing to play, but even if they were playing against if he was playing the entire game, it's still a really good defense in Miami. So I'm staying away from Josh Allen because I don't think we're going to be seeing him a lot this week. Derek, how about you?
I'm going with Kyler Murray. We talked about it, but he's going against the Rams. Before last week, he hadn't topped 50 rushing yards in the last 5 games. He was hampering that shoulder that he suffered against Seattle. And then he ran for 75 last week, and he got a leg injury. So his status was uncertain for most of the week. He is going to be playing today. But without his ability to run, he just becomes a pedestrian option for me in fantasy. He hasn't even topped 250 yards except for that Eagles game. So in 4 of his last 5 games, he hasn't even reached 250 passing yards. I think that Kingsbury offense has gotten very stale over the past month, and the Rams is not going to be the game where he fixes it. No Christian Kirk, no Larry Fitzgerald. This is going to be a very low-scoring game, I think.
Tom, how about you?
So I know that I had DK as my stud, but I really don't like Russ. Not for the purpose of that he's going to do bad. Like I said, I think DK can torch this defense, and Russ is probably going to feast. But I don't like him for the 7,500 price tag. I just think that there are better quarterbacks at that price level that you could either pay up for, like Aaron Rodgers is only $1,000 more, or you can go for one of the sleepers that we have here that are a lot less, where you can spend up at other positions. So I think that Russ is going to do well, and he's going to have a good game, but there are guys either in our studs categories or our sleeper categories that could have better games for either better price tags if they're going to play better, or sleepers that you can be more cost efficient.
So I found the stat, and it's 39 consecutive games that the Baltimore Ravens have rushed for at least 100 yards as a team.
Greg Roman and Lamar Jackson.
The next closest has 7.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
That's a team you don't want to play in the playoffs. The way they can run the ball.
We talked a lot about that on Thursday on the Zero Tech. This is a scary team.
I feel like they're better over the past 10 years with Harbaugh as the underdog too. they just fit that profile where they can come in and beat you. That's
All right. Dud running backs of the week. And I told you I was going to talk about a Seattle Seahawk, and I'm going to talk about Chris Carson. I'm just not sure that they're going to utilize Chris Carson a whole lot. He's very important to this team. They do have the NFC West locked up, so it's not like they are playing for a playoff spot. They have that locked up. They cannot drop below the 3rd seed. And they do have Rashad Penny back in the mix. And it's been a San Francisco defense that has been very stingy against the run over the past couple weeks. So I'm staying away from Chris Carson again because I'm not sure he's going to be utilized the way that they would utilize him in a normal circumstance game or a playoff game. So I'm staying away from Chris Carson, who right now is at 7,000 on FanDuel. Derek, how about you?
I'm going Aaron Jones. We talked about him before the show, but he's slated as the 10th highest paid running back on FanDuel and DraftKings. And I just don't like what I saw last week. He suffered the hip injury that sidelined him most of the first half. He came back in and had a 60-yard run that helped get a touchdown in the second half. But I think they're going to lean more on A.J. Dillon again today. I think it's another weapon that they can deploy for the playoffs. It's another headache for D coordinators to worry about in the playoffs, and it just makes their offense more versatile. They go to Soldier Field in the Windy City. It's only going to help that offense, leaning on A.J. Dillon, that power back. There's no reason to really play Aaron Jones today. They have Jamal Williams, so going into the playoffs, I'm not playing Aaron Jones.
Against a Chicago team who is very stingy against the run as it is. So, Aaron Jones is someone that I don't have anywhere in any of my lineups. Tom, how about you?
I very much agree with Derek's choice of Nick Chubb as a stud this week, and that's going to hurt Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt's 6,400. He hasn't been playing well the past couple weeks. Like, even excluding the Jet game, he hasn't been playing well at all since Chubb's been going on this little tear here. So I just don't think that they're going to utilize him as much as people have expected them to. And I think that trend is going to continue. And that's just, it's not going to go well, I guess, versus the Pittsburgh defense either. While Chubb has the ability and the talent to do well versus a defense like this, I don't think that Hunt is quite there, more because he's more of an agile pass catcher, whereas Chubb is a bruising running back that can run it up the middle, which is where Pittsburgh is their weakest, I think. So I don't like Hunt in general for the game, but 6,400 is way too much when you can get a guy like my sleeper for $200 less.
And that's the thing is that I'm finding myself looking at some of these prices and be like, how are they so close? And when I think there is a much bigger difference in terms of what we're expecting out of them today. All right, on to wide receiver duds of the week. And I am going to go with Juju Smith-Schuster. We saw last year, Juju and Mason Rudolph don't equal great fantasy production. And who knows exactly what we're going to see out of this Pittsburgh offense. I'm not sure that they're going to be that they're going to be willing to, even if they fall behind early to Cleveland, that they're going to say, okay, well, we need to start airing it out. And we did see Mason Rudolph have a pretty good connection with Deontay Johnson. It was one of the reasons why Johnson was actually their leading receiver last year. So I'm gonna stay away from Juju and his $6,800 salary. There are just way too many other options that I prefer. Derek, how about you?
I'm going with Terry McLaurin. It's been a tough stretch for Scary Terry. Yeah, exactly. He hasn't practiced all week, and him and Antonio Gibson are both slated to play tonight.
Yeah.
And he's coming off a high ankle sprain. That is just not that's not a good recipe for a wide receiver. I think he's going to be in that decoy role. The Eagles are resting a bunch of their veterans, but one guy that is playing tonight is Darius Slay. I expect McLaurin to be in that decoy role, maybe some Logan Thomas, but that D-line with the Eagles, that's the one mismatch that they can exploit. I think Alex Smith's going to be under a lot of pressure. I don't see it for Terry McLaurin tonight.
Even without a Derek Barnett and Fletcher Cox?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sweat's been better than Barnett in that DN role. I think Cox is a huge hit, but you still have Javon Hargrave and Malik Jackson in the interior. I still think it's going to cause fits for that Washington offensive line. And McLaurin hasn't scored in the last 6 games. He's fallen off his production, so I'm staying away.
All right, we actually do have a
Hey,
there we go, and so it's Aaron Jones or Chris Godwin full PPR from Darren Hopkins. This one's easy for me.
Godwin. I mean,
Chris Godwin.
we've just been crapping on Jones for like an hour and a half. I mean,
Yeah.
And that Tampa Bay offense is just firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, and Chris Godwin has had 2 big weeks in a row, including a big week 2 weeks 2 weeks ago against this Atlanta defense. And we mentioned that Tom Brady has this incentive that if he stays in the top 5 in passing yards, that he reaches it's an over $500,000 bonus. So and if they win, they lock up the number 5 seed, which means they get to play against the NFC East winner. So I think that is an enormous incentive,
absolutely,
for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to go off this week. So Chris Godwin, especially because we're not sure exactly how much Jones is going to be utilized. But thank you for your question. Good luck.
I forgot that the 5 seed would play the NFC East. I just, for some reason,
advantage.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically a freebie.
Buy. It's a second buy. The first wild card is a buy.
In some instances, a buy. I mean, you get rusty. I don't know if it hurts you because you at least rest up, but you still get more reps in against the NFC East team. I think Washington's the only one that can beat them. If they're playing Dallas or New York, I just think Tampa Bay is going to advance.
I mean, like when's the last time that a team has rested players in a playoff game?
Oh, they haven't. They haven't.
Like this might be one of the first times we see people rest players in a playoff game. Like I don't think if Tampa Bay wins it and they're playing Dallas or New York, I think we could see Tom Brady only play a half of a playoff game.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, no,
they're not that bad.
I mean,
New York almost beat them the first game. Yeah, New York almost beat them the first game. I just think Daniel Jones is very hurt.
A 2-point conversion in the final 2 minutes of the game from tying it up. So
and I don't know if Tampa's that good.
I don't know, man.
They're consistent.
It will be a road game. They will have to go on the road to either Washington, Dallas, or New York. So it's not going to be what we saw last week against Detroit, but it's obviously still the better of the options of going against either Seattle or New Orleans.
Yeah.
All right. So we were on our wide receiver duds of the week, right? Derek, did you go?
Yep.
Okay. So Tom?
Yeah, so when I was writing mine up, I was like, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm putting Juju at 6,800. And then I also was like, wait, Deontay Johnson's also 6,800? I put the both. And then I'm like, wait, I should probably check if someone took Juju. Ryan got Juju. So I'm like, oh, well, that's easy. I don't have to talk about the entire Pittsburgh thing by myself because Pittsburgh with Mason Rudolph does not move the ball through the air. And because Pittsburgh is so bad at the run this year, they can't move the ball on the run. So we're going to see how they can move it, and it's going to be probably through Deontay Johnson, but it's Mason Rudolph. It's not going to be these deep bomb plays that Deontay's used to going to get. It's going to be a lot of crossing routes. It's going to be a lot of drag routes. It's going to be short stuff that Mason Rudolph can hit and run away from Myles Garrett on. So, I don't like the 6,800.
That to me is one of the most intriguing storylines of this week. Is that the
How
one
many
game
times
that Mason Rudolph gets into is going to be against Myles Garrett?
Right? So, and Myles Garrett's playing for Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's played at that level. So I would love to see Myles Garrett just go out there and sack him 7, 8, 9 times, because that would just be great. So I don't love the $6,800 price tag for either of them. So I'm right there with you, Ryan. I don't like the Steelers receivers this week.
All right, tight end duds of the week. I'm
All of
going to
them.
go with Darren. Yeah, well, I actually like a couple, but Darren Waller at 7,800 is just too expensive for. Especially when I see other ways you can exploit other teams. The matchup against Denver isn't one of the better ones that a tight end is going to have. And he, of all of the tight ends that actually are playing, he's the most expensive. So I'm saying even, and we know how much I love myself some Darren Waller. My go-to team name is I Am the Walrus. But I'm just not putting him in any of my DFS lineups this week.
Agreed. I thought the price tag was way too much. Even having to be the most expensive with Kelsey out is just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Derek, what you got?
I'm going with TJ Hawkinson. He's another guy who's a little bit of a pricier option in the tight end landscape, and he's just fallen off the face of the earth the last 2 weeks. He fumbled. He had a crucial fumble in that Tennessee game where they were seemingly in the game for about 3 quarters. His fumble kind of cost him the game. Since then, he's kind of been phased out. And yes, last week's not really a fair barometer with Chase Daniel in the game. But in the last 2 games, he's had 6 catches for 41 yards combined. Matt Stafford's back, but I don't even know why. I mean, poor guy. I mean, he's so tough.
It's because Matt Stafford, when he's able to play, is going.
Exactly.
I love Matthew Stafford.
I love Matt Stafford.
So do I, but what can we expect out of Hawkinson today? Not very much. And I get it's Minnesota's defense, and that's appetizing in itself. But, I mean, you stay away from all Detroit Lions today in DFS, in my opinion.
So, quick non-dud question for you. I had shown my parents the clip from Stafford's rookie year versus the Browns.
So we had a lengthy discussion about that.
The best mic'd up ever
on Thursday, because the entire clip of him being mic'd up was released, or someone had posted it, and my God,
I watched that clip
with Matt Stafford.
I watch that clip pretty often because I have it saved on my phone. And I watch that clip often whenever I'm like feeling down or something, or I feel like I can't do something. That guy is one of the most inspirational quarterbacks. But do you realize he's only 32? He's still relatively young. He could go and take over a team that's looking for a rebuild and be their quarterback for the next 4 or 5 years.
Old because he's always hurt and he's in Detroit, and they're just sucking the life out of him.
So the question that I've posed to you was my father brought up the thing where the Jets either take Sewell or they trade down and get a receiver of some sort and sign Matthew Stafford or trade for Matthew Stafford.
Okay, what would the trade look like? So you draft Sewell and then maybe they have another
Seattle pick. Yeah.
Yeah. They have Darnold.
So you send Darnold and let's say the 33 or their 3rd round pick or something. You send Darnold and one of those picks for Stafford, and then you get Sewell and you can take a running back, and Najee Harris or Travis Etienne with the Seattle pick.
I also feel like Detroit is very much in play for like Zach Wilson and where they're going to pick.
I mean, they could trade up. You could swap first and swap Darnold and Stafford and something else. I don't know. I mean, you could.
That's interesting. That's definitely interesting.
Because 32 is pretty young still. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is hitting almost at 40.
I think if you have Sewell and Becton, I mean, we talked about it. This might be the 2 best young tackles in football. 2 of the best young tackles in football. You bring in an offensive guy, so Dayball, whatever, have your choice. They have a ton of cap space. Maybe you go after Allen Robinson. This offense overnight becomes an above-average offense.
Yeah, so I think Stafford might be a viable option, which is the reason I brought it up, because I would really love to see it just because of how much I love Matt Stafford.
Oh, absolutely.
So anyway, back to the duds. I am going to go with Gronk at 6,100. I know that we're raving over Tampa Bay's offense and everything, but Gronk got some garbage time touchdown or two from Blaine Gabbert. I mean, unless that happens, he's worth the price tag. But 6,100, I don't know. I like my sleeper more for $600 less, but I don't see him being this huge part of the offense again.
It feels weird because I think all of us love what Tom Brady can do this week, but it's tough to ever trust the Tampa Bay receiving core because there are so many options that you never know which one is going to go off, except for last week when everybody went off.
Yeah, everyone had 20-plus points. I mean, you couldn't go wrong.
That was unbelievable what they were able to do last week, especially considering Brady only played a half.
Yeah, I mean, Blaine Gabbert torched up the Lions. I mean, Jesus.
His first pass of the game was a touchdown to Rob Gronkowski. All right. Week 17 is the ultimate week for finding sleepers. And so I was all gung-ho that I said, all right, well, I think Walford is going to be the guy that I'm going to go after. And then I was actually looking at the prices, and the guy that I chose is only $100 more, and he's going up against a team that got absolutely pulverized through the air last week, and it's the New England Patriots. So I'm going to go with Sam Darnold at 6,600. I do think that he is playing for a job for next year, whether it be on the Jets or for another team. This is going to be the lasting impression that some of these other teams are going to have of Sam Darnold. And the Patriots defense is just, I mean, they're without Stephon Gilmore, without so many other guys, is just going to get obliterated. They got obliterated by a really good team. Do I think that they're going to put up 38 points against them? No, but I can easily see a 24-27 point game from the Jets against New England, and it's not going to be on the ground. I think Ty Johnson is going to be getting the start, and we've seen Ty Johnson actually have success catching the ball out of the backfield. So that just gives Darnold an extra weapon. So at only 6,600, he offers so much salary relief to try and get players at other positions. Derek, what do you got?
Sorry. So I'm going with Mitch Trubisky against Green Bay today. We always seem to be talking about him each week on this show. But he is the 23rd most expensive quarterback going into this week against Green Bay, and he's playing for his job. He is a free agent, so even if it's not in Chicago, he is putting on an audition for somewhere else. So, and this offense with Bill Lazors look a lot better. Green Bay's defense does not scare me. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I like the over, and I like Mitch Trubisky if you want to save up money at that quarterback spot.
Tom, who you got?
I'm going with Danny Dimes versus Dallas. 7,000 on FanDuel. He's going to be playing for potentially a playoff spot. I mean, the guy is it could happen. I think that the Eagles have a decent chance to beat Washington, and the Giants all know it. The Cowboys know it. Whoever wins that game could go to the playoffs. And I know that Daniel Jones has struggled a little bit in the passing game, but he's been playing through injury. I think he's 100% healthy now, if not close to it. And when he is You're my Giant guy, right? I mean,
All right, so I know that
I think it'll be better. I think it'll be better.
Earlier in this week, there was an interview, or when he was talking to the media, he came out and said that he doesn't expect to be running the ball, and that the game plan that we've seen over the past couple of weeks is going to be a very similar game plan. So I know that raised a lot of eyebrows because he hasn't been running the ball since the hamstring injury. But if we've learned anything this year is that when a team talks about game plan to the media, don't believe a freaking word they say.
very true.
So I think that there is a possibility that he's healthier than what other people are trying to lead on. But I don't think he's 100%. But I think he might be closer to 100% than than what he's leading on.
Okay, well then, in either way, I know he's been struggling a little bit in the passing game, but I kind of attribute that to the hamstring too, just because of the way you throw the ball and everything. But if he's healthier and he has that dual threat ability, I think he could potentially ball out in this potential win and in game.
And you look at the Giants, and the game that they put up the most points this year was against the Cowboys.
Exactly. The matchup doesn't scare me much either. So, Danny Dimes.
All right. So yeah, let's quickly run through, since we only have a couple more minutes, with the sleepers. So I'm gonna quickly run through my my running back, wide receiver, and tight end. I'm gonna go Darwin Thompson, who I think is going to get the majority of the work for the Kansas City Chiefs today. He's going up against the Chargers, and he's at the bare minimum, 4,500. So he allows you to spend up elsewhere. I like Des Bryant at only 5,200, getting to go up against Cincy in a win-in situation for the Ravens. He has scored touchdowns in back-to-back weeks, and it looks like Lamar Jackson trusts him. And my favorite play of the week is Dan Arnold going against the Rams. The Rams, the one place they have been a little bit susceptible to is the tight end. And without Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald today, it's going to open up more opportunities for Dan Arnold in the passing game. And we've seen him break off some big plays over the past couple weeks. Derek, who you got?
I'm going a running back our way, Akumbawale, who we talked about. He had 14 carries last week, over 5 yards a carry against a stout Bears defense, so he was efficient. He's going to have that James Robinson role, 3 catches as well last week. So I actually like him. He has a decent floor today. In the same game, I'll go Zach Pascal. He has logged at least 60 yards his past 2 games, and he has 3 touchdowns in his last 2 games combined. And he's going against Jacksonville's plus matchup. And then tight end, I'm going with Donald Parham. He's at $2,900. Hunter Henry's out with COVID again. He's a free agent. I actually think this is a tryout audition to see if Parham can log that starting role next year with Justin Herbert. So I think if you want to save up a tight end and almost punt it away with Donald Parham, I think that's a good play.
Yeah, Tom, why don't you wrap it up?
Sure. So I got Lil Gio versus Baltimore. Guy's been balling out the past couple of weeks. We've seen the revitalization of that. Even without Joe Burrow, he's at 6,200, so he's a nice cheap option if you're going to pay up for a guy like Derrick Henry. For my wideout, I like Hollywood Brown paired across from Dez. He's gotten 12 or more points on FanDuel over the past 4 weeks consistently. We're starting to see Lamar figure out how to throw the football again, which is really nice. And then for my tight end, I'm going with my man, my myth, my legend, Hayden Hurst, 5,500. Another one where you can spend down on this position to pay up for others. Atlanta's going to try and stay in this game potentially for a half. And Hayden Hurst is going to be the secondary option or maybe the third option to the receivers there.
All right. That is going to wrap it up for today. I want to thank everybody. I mean, the response that we've gotten over this season, it was kind of thrown together last minute, but the response that we've gotten from the viewing audience has been unbelievable. Want to thank everybody who has tuned in, who has sent in their lineup questions. Make sure that you are following us on Twitter. I am at rstern33. Derek is at Derek Mountain. Tom is at THB315. We're all part of the backsportspage.com family. Make sure you're following Backsportspage at Backsportspage on all social media outlets. Check out backsportspage.com for all of the great content that's going up. We will be having, I know I've been talking with Justin Brownlow from the Fourth and Long podcast. We're going to have some integration during the early part of the offseason as we head towards the NFL draft. So definitely make sure you're tuning in. Click the if you're watching on YouTube, click the like and subscribe button so you know when we're all going live. And once again, thank you for tuning in. It really has been a pleasure just talking fantasy every Sunday morning and getting to interact with the audience. Guys, it's been a pleasure. I want to thank you for a great season, and we still have the Zero Technique pod that we'll be going through throughout the playoffs and the offseason. So make sure you're tuning into that. Guys, enjoy week 17. Derek, good luck in your championship today.
$400.
Oh my God!
I know.
Sorry.
Alvin Kamara was very integral.
Derrick Henry.
In getting
Henry
me
could just take care of it for me today. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that's going to do it for us. Again, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you all next season.
Thanks, boy.